Colton, married to Madeline. 3 years legally shackled, 6 years total in the trenches. She's a yoga instructor slash freelance graphic designer, which, in plain English, means she spends her mornings teaching people how to breathe and her afternoons arguing with clients about font sizes. I'm a business manager for an industrial equipment company here in Ohio, which is just as sexy as it sounds. Pretty normal middle-class setup, or so I thought. For the past 8 months, I've been pulling overtime like it was a competitive sport. Not because we're broke. Nope. Thanks to a rock-solid prenup. Yes, the contract of love, drafted with all the romance of a tax audit. We're financially comfortable. My dad didn't have one. Bless his poor, gullible heart. When his cheating wife cashed out, half his retirement flew south with her. That man basically funded her new boyfriend's golf membership. So yeah, lesson absorbed. Anyway, the overtime wasn't about survival. It was about saving up for a surprise, a new Honda CR-V for Madeline. Her trusty 2018 Civic has been limping along like an arthritic donkey, transmission slipping, heater blowing air at a polite 60 degrees. She's dropped enough hints about needing more space for yoga props that even a deaf man in another state would have heard her. I figured the CR-V was perfect, reliable, practical, and she could even write off part of it as a business expense. Husband of the year material. Of course, all this meant my nights ended around 9 instead of 6. The company had landed a monster contract with an auto parts manufacturer, and I was the lucky soul chosen to babysit million-dollar machines while teaching grown men in reflective vests that green button equals start. But the commission alone? Enough to cover the CR-V and maybe a bow on top. Madeline seemed fine with it. She'd have dinner waiting, lukewarm, sometimes revived from the dead 3 times by the microwave. But still, it was there. I'd come home, drop my bag like I'd just returned from war, and she'd beam at me. "You must be exhausted," she'd say in that supportive, Hallmark commercial way. Then we'd eat, shuffle to the couch, Netflix it up, and call it marriage. One night I mumbled, "Sorry, I'm never home before bedtime anymore." Trying to joke, trying not to sound like a zombie. She smiled, patted my arm, and said, "You're working towards something important. I'm proud of how dedicated you are." Dedicated? Yep, that's me. St. Colton of overtime. I figured she thought the big surprise was a vacation, maybe finally finishing the basement renovation she'd been nagging me about for 2 years. You know, something wholesome and Pinterest-worthy. Then, 3 weeks ago, I finished a project ahead of schedule and pulled into the driveway at 6:30. Basically a miracle. Our place is this 1950s ranch with single-pane windows that might as well be made of wet tissue paper. The acoustics are ridiculous. If you sneeze in the living room, the neighbor across the street probably blesses you. So, as I'm walking up to the porch, I catch Madeline's voice floating through the open window. "Kathy, I'm telling you, this is perfect timing. He's never home before 9 these days. Sometimes not until 10. I could easily meet Chad for coffee, maybe dinner. See where things go. Colton would never know." I froze mid-step. You ever seen one of those wildlife documentaries where the gazelle suddenly realizes the lion's behind them? That was me, except the lion was wearing yoga pants and using my Wi-Fi. Chad, of course. Captain Instagram commenter from her yoga studio. He'd been dropping those eyebrow-raising remarks on her posts for months. Nothing that technically screamed affair in progress, but definitely the kind of stuff you don't want to see under a photo of your wife folded in half like a human pretzel. Gems like, "You're glowing in this photo, and your energy is infectious." Yeah, infectious like a rash. Inside, Madeline kept right on going, apparently unaware she was doing a TED Talk for Betrayal 101 out the window. I know, but Kathy, what if this is my only chance to see if there's something better out there? I mean, Colton's a good guy. He provides well, but he's so predictable, so safe. Chad makes me feel alive again, like I did before I got married. Remember how I used to be? Well, gee, sorry for not juggling chainsaws in the kitchen or base jumping off the roof every Tuesday night to spice things up. Predictable and safe. Yeah, those 2 dangerous traits women hate in husbands. And Kathy. Oh, Kathy, her personal cheerleader of bad decisions. The same Kathy whose own marriage went down faster than a bargain roller coaster after her husband caught her sweating it out with a personal trainer. He took her to the cleaners so thoroughly she's basically living in the lost and found bin of life now. Bitter as week-old coffee and apparently determined to drag other women down with her. That's exactly what I'm saying. Kathy's voice blared through the speakerphone, clear as day. "You gave Colton your best years and for what? So you could be some boring suburban housewife? Girl, you're 31, not 51. If you don't explore this connection with Chad now, you'll regret it forever." Ah yes, the sage wisdom of Kathy, patron saint of poor life choices. always ready to hand out relationship advice from the comfort of her folding chair at Divorcee Anonymous. I stood there on the porch for another 5 minutes, basically eavesdropping on the strategic planning session of Operation Betray Colton. They hashed out the logistics like a couple of corporate managers. When to meet him, how to avoid leaving digital trails, what to wear. Honestly, I've sat through less organized Zoom calls at work. Madeline even threw in, maybe coffee first, dinner later, just to ease into it. The call ended with them agreeing to meet for coffee the next day to strategize the approach, which I assume is cheater speak for plot how not to get caught. I stayed outside another minute, listening to her clink dishes and shuffle around like it was any normal Wednesday. Then I circled to the back door, jingled my keys, smacked my briefcase on the counter, and strolled in like I hadn't just overheard my marriage circling the drain. Madeline greeted me with a kiss, all bright-eyed, and asked about my day like she wasn't just rehearsing her future with Captain Instagram Glow. She even made my favorite dinner. My absolute favorite. Nothing says betrayal like perfectly seasoned mashed potatoes. That night, lying next to her, I stared at the ceiling for hours. 6 years together, 3 married. And here she was plotting an affair with the same smile she used to ask how my project went. Like betrayal pairs best with roasted chicken and small talk. The only thing keeping me sane was knowing the prenups got my back. That thing's tighter than TSA security. I've been documenting our finances since day one. My house, her student loans, some savings account that could barely cover a yoga mat. It wasn't even a red flag back then. We both agreed it was smart planning. Property, savings, debt responsibility, all laid out like a rule book. No alimony unless there are kids. And guess what? No kids. We were waiting until her student loans were gone and the emergency fund was plumped up. Responsible, mature, predictable. And yet, I keep circling back to that one phrase Kathy drilled into her head. Explore your options. Like I'm some appetizer sampler on a restaurant menu. Just an option she's weighing against other choices. 2 days later, I called my lawyer. His name? Ron Jeremy. Not that Ron Jeremy. But honestly, tell people your attorney's name is Ron Jeremy and watch them either choke on their drink or assume you're about to produce a VHS tape from 1987. In reality, my Ron Jeremy is less adult film, more divorce god. Picture a hitman who moonlights as a DJ on weekends. Pinstripe suit in court, leather jacket at night, spinning Stayin' Alive at some dive bar like it's a personal anthem. This is the guy who drafted our prenup 3 years ago and has been my family attorney ever since. He's the kind of man who can file a motion while chewing a cigar, and I swear when he walked me through the prenup, he looked like he was auditioning for John Wick, Divorce Court Edition. He reviewed the prenup again and nodded like he'd just watched an opponent fold in the first round. You're well protected, he said, cool as ice. Then he leaned back and added, start documenting everything. It wasn't advice, it was a command. Like the Grim Reaper of failed marriages had just given me homework. So I did exactly what he said, religiously, like it was the gospel according to St. Ron of litigation. The day after my first call to him, I set up a small recording device in the living room. Perfectly legal in my state with one-party consent, which basically means if I'm in the room, or even if I just say I'm in the room, it's fair game. Over the next week, I collected audio files like I was running my own low-budget Dateline NBC. 3 more conversations between Madeline and Kathy, primetime betrayal content. One had them scheduling specific dates when I'd be stuck at work. Another was all about staying off the grid, cash instead of cards, restaurants I'd never set foot in, cover stories about evening yoga workshops. My wife out here reinventing herself as Jason Bourne in yoga pants. And yet, at home, she was pure sitcom wife. Loving, attentive, asking about my day like she hadn't just mapped out an affair on Google Calendar. She even surprised me with baseball tickets for the weekend. Thought you'd like a guy's night out, she said, handing them over like a Hallmark heroine. The cognitive dissonance could have been weaponized. But then the cracks started showing. Suddenly, she's invested in her appearance again. New workout clothes, salon trips, organic face masks that cost more than my first car payment. And her phone? That thing turned into a second limb. No more charging it on the kitchen counter. Nope. Straight to her side of the bed, clutched like a Faberge egg, even escorted to the bathroom for privacy. It was like living with 2 women at once. The sweet, predictable wife I thought I had, and this undercover operative plotting her big exploration phase. And I kept thinking about that phrase Kathy kept drilling into her head. Explore your options. Like I was just an option she's weighing against other choices. Last Friday, she finally made her move. Dinner plates were barely cleared when she put on that serious face. The one that looks like she just got cast as woman with a secret in a soap opera. Colton, we need to talk, she said, folding her hands neatly in her lap like she was about to negotiate a hostage situation. I set down my coffee cup, already knowing the script. I'd heard the dress rehearsal through the world's thinnest windows, remember? Okay, I said, calm as ever. I'm listening. She took this dramatic inhale, exhale, like she was powering up for the role of her life. I love you. I really do. But I feel like I've lost myself in our relationship. Her voice had that weird cadence people get when they've practiced their speech in the bathroom mirror 10 times too many. If she had cue cards hidden under the table, I wouldn't have been surprised. I need some space to remember who I was before I became just Colton's wife, she continued, with all the conviction of someone auditioning for a TED Talk. I nodded slowly, keeping my face as neutral as Switzerland. How long are we talking about? Maybe a month or two, she said quickly, clearly relieved I hadn't flipped the table. Kathy said I could stay with her while I gained some perspective on our relationship and what I really want from life. Of course, Kathy had already offered. Kathy's probably got a welcome basket and a framed "Cheaters Live Here" sign ready by the door. And what would that look like practically? I asked, throwing in just the right amount of concern, like I was auditioning for Best Supporting Husband. Would we have contact during this time? She brightened, actually brightened, like she thought this was going smoother than she'd dared hope. We could text, maybe talk on the phone. I just need physical space to think clearly. And after the separation, what then? I asked, tilting my head like a man genuinely curious instead of a man mentally high-fiving Ron Jeremy, divorce God. Well, she said carefully, maybe we could try couples therapy when I'm ready. Work through whatever issues we have. Then she reached across the table and touched my hand, her voice soft and quivery, like she was auditioning for The Notebook, Suburban Edition. I was worried you'd be angry, she said. I glanced down at her hand on mine. The same hand that would probably be wrapped around Chad's latte within the week. I'm not angry, Madeline. I'm just trying to understand what you need. Her eyes filled with tears on cue, like she'd been practicing in front of the bathroom mirror between face masks. This doesn't mean I don't love you. I just need to figure out if I'm staying because I choose to, or because it's comfortable. Oscar-worthy. Really. Bravo. I want you to be happy, I said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze that screamed supportive husband, while internally screaming, thank you for making this easier than expected. If this is what you need, then take all the time you need. The relief that spread across her face was unmistakable. She'd clearly braced herself for a scene. Maybe some yelling, maybe some tears, maybe me begging her not to go. Instead, she got Hallmark Channel Colton, fully supportive of her brave little journey of self-discovery. If only she knew the real journey I had lined up for her. What she didn't know was that I'd already filed for divorce. Papers were submitted last Monday, stamped and sealed before she could even say trial separation. She also had no clue that the $47,000 I'd bled out of overtime hours, the money earmarked for her shiny new CRV, was now sitting comfortably in a separate account that predates our marriage. Translation: thanks to the prenup, it's mine, untouchable, and safe from her yoga-propelled midlife crisis. She moved out Sunday morning, giving me this sweeping speech about how much she loves me, but needs to explore who she is outside of being someone's wife. I almost offered to pack her bags myself. Instead, I just stood there while she dragged out 2 suitcases and a few boxes of personal items, which looked suspiciously like every stitch of clothing she owns plus a Himalayan salt lamp. And right there, parked in my driveway like a getaway driver for Teen Bad Decision, was Kathy. She strutted up to the porch for moral support, tossing me these sympathetic looks like she wasn't the evil mastermind behind this whole operation. Take care of yourself, Colton, Kathy said as we loaded Madeline's stuff into her car. Real Hallmark moment. If Hallmark did divorce specials. This isn't about you not being enough. Sometimes people just need to spread their wings. Yeah, sure. Spread her wings. More like spread her legs, but I kept that line to myself. Instead, I helped carry her bags like the supportive idiot I was supposed to be, smiled, and told her to take all the time she needed. I even tossed in a little, I'll be here when you're ready to talk about our future. Smooth delivery, like I'd practiced it in the mirror. She bought it. The house felt different that night. Quieter. Not in a tragic, Nicholas Sparks way. More like, finally, no one's going to leave half-drunk kombucha bottles all over the counter. Peaceful, really. My lawyer says we should have everything ready to serve her papers within the week. The plan is simple. Let her get comfy in her little eat, pray, love audition, then smack her with reality. Timing is everything. Some of you asked why I didn't just confront her the second I overheard the whole scheme. Here's the thing. I could have. 3 weeks ago, I could have marched in there, demanded answers, dragged us to counseling, maybe even taped the broken marriage back together with enough duct tape and denial. But the moment I heard her planning to cheat with such precision, like she was writing a heist movie script, something inside me just snapped. She wasn't brainstorming, she was scheduling. The marriage was over the second she decided to shop around, while still keeping me on layaway as the backup plan. I'm not angry anymore. Nope. Anger takes energy, and I'm saving mine for paperwork and gym reps. I'm just done. And if I'm going to be done, I'm going to be smart about it, not emotional. She moved out Sunday. Papers are hitting her Friday. That gives her a week to bask in her grand journey of self-discovery before the plot twist hits. Yes, I'm still going to work every day. Keeping busy helps. Colleagues have been great, supportive without poking their noses too far. HR must have put out a memo. Don't ask Colton about his wife unless you want a spreadsheet of sarcastic answers. Friday turned out to be very interesting. Madeline had been texting me all week like some motivational speaker on a wellness retreat. It's so refreshing being away, she typed with what I assume was a smug little grin. I'm really gaining clarity about myself. Clarity, I muttered at my desk. Translation, Chad finally bought her that $7 latte. Then came the photos. Coffee dates with new friends. Right, probably Chad. Then yoga sessions at different studios. Different studios, because God forbid she gain clarity in just one. Then a picture of some overpriced sushi dinner, captioned, treating myself for the first time in years. I almost replied, good thing I never treated you to rent, vacations, or your Netflix subscription. But no, I played my part, Mr. Supportive Husband of the Year. Sent back. Take all the time you need, babe. I'm glad you're finding yourself. And the Oscar goes to me. Friday afternoon, I drove to Kathy's apartment complex. One of those luxury living places with the fake brick glued on the outside, and some pretentious name like the residences at Willowbrook. You know the type. Overpriced shoeboxes with a pool no one swims in because the water's green by June. Madeline answered the door with this bright, too wide smile, like I was the prodigal husband returning to beg for forgiveness. Colton, this is such a nice surprise. I was just thinking about you. Come in, come in. I was about to make some herbal tea. Of course she was. Nothing says, I'm totally reinventing myself, like herbal tea at 3 p.m. on a Friday. She looked different. New haircut, makeup on even though it wasn't date night, and one of those flowy bohemian dresses she used to call curtains for hippies. The whole thing screamed, look at me. I'm mysterious and free-spirited now. I handed her the manila envelope. I was thinking about you too. That's why I wanted to get these to you as soon as possible. Her smile cracked. She took the envelope like it was ticking. What? What is this? Divorce papers, I said, as politely as if I'd just handed her a casserole. I figured since you're exploring your options, I should explore mine, too. The color drained from her face so fast you'd think she'd just been told Starbucks ran out of oat milk. She sat down on Kathy's couch, staring at the first page like it was written in hieroglyphics. Colton, what? I don't understand. This is just a separation. I told you I needed time to think. And I gave you time to think, I said. I also gave myself time to think. This is what I've decided. Right then Kathy appeared from the kitchen, holding a mug like she'd been waiting for her cue. She clocked the envelope instantly, and her face snapped into damage control mode. The same way people look when a waiter drops the birthday cake before it reaches the table. Colton, don't you think you're being a little hasty here? She said in her best soothing voice. Madeline just needs some space to work through some things. This doesn't have to be permanent. To work through things like screwing Chad from the yoga studio, I said calmly. The apartment went dead silent. Madeline's face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds, like she was auditioning for every soap opera role at once. We haven't, Colton. I would never. I raised an eyebrow. You would never. For what? Plan to cheat on me? Because I've got recordings of you and Kathy discussing exactly that. Practicing lies to tell me, scheduling times to meet him based on my work schedule. Kathy's face went pale like I'd just told her the Starbucks pumpkin spice latte was discontinued. You recorded us. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, I said, probably sounding way too pleased with myself. One-party consent state. I'm the one party, and I consented to recording conversations in my own home. Madeline cycled again, shock, desperation, anger. You'd think she was trying to win an Oscar for Best Actress in a train wreck. First came the waterworks. I never actually did anything physical, she sobbed, clutching at the air like she was drowning in her own lies. It was just conversations, just fantasy. I would never actually go through with it. Yeah, sure, I said. And I only fantasize about being 6'4" with abs. Doesn't make it real, but it's still embarrassing when people find out. Then came the bargaining. Maybe we could go to counseling, she sniffled. Work through this together. I'll cut all contact with Lewis and Kathy if that's what it takes. I shook my head. Trust doesn't exactly respawn like a video game character. It's gone. Doesn't matter if you didn't actually hit the big red cheat button yet. That's when the tears magically dried up, and the sadness turned into something much sharper. She switched tactics completely. Fine. If this is really what you want, if you're going to throw away 6 years over some stupid conversations, then I'll need access to our savings account to get back on my feet. That was her opening gambit. I almost laughed. Savings account. Our savings account. As if she'd been putting anything in that jar besides inspirational quotes and Target receipts. I gave up career opportunities to support your advancement, she said, like she'd been offered the Nobel Prize in between downward dogs at yoga class. I deserve half of everything we've built together. That's when I explained, as politely as someone explaining gravity to a flat earther, that the money she was thinking of, the overtime money she knew I'd been saving, was never ours. It had always been in my individual account that predated our marriage. And, miracle of miracles, our prenup clearly states that individual assets remain individual assets. Her face cycled faster than a slot machine jackpot. Angry, desperate, furious. Ding ding ding. Jackpot. She jabbed a finger at me and hissed. You planned this. You've been planning to leave me, and you set me up. I shook my head. No, Madeline. I planned to surprise you with a new car. I ended up surprising you with divorce papers instead. Funny how life works. That's when the screaming started. It's not fair. You tricked me into signing a prenup that leaves me with nothing. I deserve compensation for 3 years of supporting your career and being a good wife. I raised my eyebrows, my voice low, almost dangerous. Supporting my career? You mean teaching yoga part-time and dabbling in freelance design while I carried the mortgage, utilities, groceries, your car payment, health insurance, and most of our entertainment? That's your idea of support? And a good wife? What a joke. You planned to screw another guy while calling it finding yourself. Tell me, what exactly did you find, Madeline? The thrill of another man's hands on your body while I was out earning a living. She sputtered like a kettle about to blow when her friend Kathy, her self-appointed hype woman, decided to jump in. Kathy slammed her hands on the table like she was delivering a closing argument. We'll get lawyers. We'll fight this prenup. It was signed under duress. You manipulated a naive young woman. I leaned back, almost impressed. Naive? Madeline was 26 when she signed that prenup. That's old enough to rent a car, vote, and know not to buy an extended warranty at Best Buy. But sure, let's call her a helpless lamb led to the slaughter. They doubled down, like gamblers with no chips left. Threats, accusations, the whole 9 yards. And that's when I reminded them both they were welcome to try, but Ron was confident in our documentation. We had emails detailing every nuance of the prenup and 3 years of financial records showing exactly what we agreed to. Pretty airtight, if I do say so myself. Then Madeline hit me with the nuclear option. I'm pregnant. I stared at her, really studied her face. 3 weeks ago, she'd been sipping wine at dinner. Last week, she'd been posting Instagram photos holding cocktails like they were tiny awards. Congratulations, I said finally, slow, deliberate. I assume Chad is excited about becoming a father? Her face went through the full horror spectrum in under 2 seconds. And then she broke down, sobbed like a toddler whose ice cream just fell, admitted she wasn't pregnant, begged me to reconsider, promised she'd never actually gone through with anything physical with Chad. It was all just fantasy, she wailed. Kathy encouraged it. It was stupid. Maybe that's true, I said, letting the words hang in the air like a punchline. But you were planning to. The only reason you didn't cheat yet is because opportunity hadn't knocked yet. Well, congratulations. Now opportunity is basically giving you a standing ovation. I reminded them both, calmly, like I was explaining a weather report, that the divorce was happening regardless. Physical cheating? Emotional cheating? Planning to cheat? Doesn't matter. The marriage ended the moment she decided to explore other options while keeping me as her backup plan. They both just sat there, in the doorway of that fake luxury apartment, crying like the lead characters in a Lifetime movie. Kathy tried to shoot me that pitying glare that said, I can't believe my genius plan backfired, while Madeline alternated between sobs and pleading. Ron, my lawyer, DJ, hitman extraordinaire, says we're now requiring medical documentation for any pregnancy-related claims going forward. She can't fake medical records. Someone asked about the recordings. Yes, Ron has copies of everything. Every single word, timestamped, cataloged, ready. Admissible evidence. Bulletproof. If she tries to contest the divorce terms, she's going to wish she'd stuck to Instagram yoga posts instead of plotting my slow-motion heartbreak. 3 weeks later, and I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again. Things escalated fast after I served the papers, but at least it's over and I can start moving on with my life. The day after my last post, Madeline kicked off what Ron, with his usual flair for drama, called a scorched earth campaign. Monday morning, my phone rings. It's HR. Apparently, Madeline had called my office claiming I was having a complete mental breakdown and might be dangerous to myself or others. She told them I'd been acting erratically, that she feared for her safety, and that I might do something crazy at work. Crazy? The last time I did something crazy at work, I reorganized the supply closet by the Dewey Decimal System. Fortunately, I'd already given my direct supervisor a heads up about the divorce and warned him about potential false claims. My boss has known me for 5 years. He called me into his office, explained what happened, and gave me that knowing look that said, "Yep, this is Madeline. Stay calm, Colton." He assured me they weren't taking it seriously, but of course, HR had to document it. Paper trail, because nothing says innocent like 37 pages of official forms about your alleged mental collapse. Tuesday, she tried the fake pregnancy angle again, this time calling Ron and claiming she needed emergency spousal support due to her condition. Ron, calm as ever, immediately requested medical verification from an actual doctor. Not a home pregnancy test. Not the neighbor's psychic. An actual doctor. We never heard back. Wednesday, though. Wednesday was something else. Kathy decided to get creative. She called our neighbors, pretending to be a social worker investigating reports of domestic disturbance at our address. She claimed there had been complaints about screaming and possible violence. Unfortunately for them, one of our neighbors is Hogan, a retired police sergeant. And Hogan doesn't buy stories about magical social workers investigating phantom domestic disturbances. He got suspicious when social worker Kathy couldn't produce proper identification, agency contact info, or even spell the county social services department correctly. "Ma'am," Hogan said, voice calm but deadly, "I'm going to need to see some official ID and a badge number, or I'm calling the real police to report someone impersonating a government official." Kathy panicked. She bolted for her car like it was on fire. Hogan got her license plate number and called it in to his former colleagues. They traced it back to Kathy and paid her a little visit about filing false reports. I have to admit, watching that unfold from my living room felt like binge-watching Cops Live. Of course, my lawyer documented everything. Each harassment attempt just made our case stronger, showing the court exactly who they were dealing with. Two adults who apparently thought they could rewrite reality like a bad daytime soap. Thursday was quiet. Too quiet. I should have known they were plotting something bigger. Friday evening, my phone rang. It was Chad. Yes, that Chad. "Dude," he said, sounding genuinely exasperated. "I need to talk to you about Madeline. This whole thing has gotten completely out of hand." Turns out Madeline had been spinning him some epic narrative. I was abusive, dangerous, controlling, and she desperately needed a safe place to stay while dealing with me, her monstrous husband. Classic sob story, Oscar-worthy. Then she started talking about money, lawyers, settlements, getting what she deserves from me. Chad, being a reasonable human being, started getting suspicious. Did some digging, found my Facebook, photos of Madeline and me together, realized her timeline didn't match up at all with what she'd been telling him. I stopped answering her calls. Chad said, voice heavy with disbelief, "I'm done getting dragged into this mess." The final court date was last Tuesday. Madeline showed up with a low-cost family law attorney. Apparently, she couldn't afford the big firms after blowing her savings on her self-discovery journey. I mean, I get it. Yoga retreats, overpriced smoothies, and soul-searching cocktails don't come cheap. She carried a binder full of printed emails and handwritten notes like she was about to present a TED Talk instead of a divorce case. She tried one last Hail Mary, claiming the prenup was signed under duress and that I had hidden assets she was somehow entitled to. My lawyer, Ron, half legal genius, half weekend DJ, smirked like I'd just handed him a winning lottery ticket. He presented everything. The prenup, email chains where we carefully hashed out the terms, and complete financial records showing every penny I'd earned and saved during our marriage. The judge barely glanced at her lawyer's half-hearted arguments before granting the divorce on the spot. No alimony, no asset division beyond what we'd explicitly shared in our joint checking account. A whopping $3,200. I almost clapped, but restrained myself. Afterward, I overheard her lawyer muttering sage advice. "Ma'am, you'd be throwing good money after bad." I nodded silently in my head, imagining her trying to argue with Ron's documentation like it was a suggestion box instead of legal evidence. Later, Willie B., hard again, my private investigator, who has a knack for finding things people think are invisible, handed me a USB drive with the full evidence of Madeline's self-discovery journey. She'd been spending money like she'd already inherited half my assets. New clothes, overpriced dinners at every trendy restaurant in town, spa treatments, even a weekend trip to Chicago with Kathy. But the real kicker? The drive contained videos of Madeline kissing Chad and going into a hotel room with him. All of it documented, time-stamped, and ready to use in court, while the credit card she was maxing out had been removed from my accounts the very day I filed for divorce. She's now personally responsible for about $1,000 in debt she racked up during her little exploration phase. I keep imagining her trying to justify the sushi dinners and spa treatments with, "It's for my soul." Colton changed the locks on the house last weekend. Had a security system installed with cameras covering every entrance. One of them even points at the garage, just in case anyone tries to smuggle a yoga mat in for some unsanctioned self-discovery. Madeline still has Kathy and a few flying monkeys sending me angry messages. "You've destroyed a good woman's life." One text said. Another, "How could you ruin her chance at happiness?" I stared at my phone for a moment, then smiled. The block feature exists for a reason. The weird part, I feel incredible. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just free. Walking through the house now, it's quiet. Peaceful. I can come home without wondering what manipulation or lie is waiting for me on the couch or in my cereal box. Life's too short to be someone's backup plan. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.